Sarah Grace Patrick, a 17-year-old from Carrollton, Georgia, is a chilling centerpiece of this documentary. On February 20th, 2025, she allegedly shot her mother, Kristin Brock, 41, and stepfather, James Brock, 45, dead in their beds as they slept, their bodies discovered by their 6-year-old daughter, charged with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault. Sarah turned herself in months later, leaving a small town reeling and a nation haunted. In this documentary, we dive deep into the twisted psyche of this teenage killer, unraveling her motives, her methods, and the darkness within through the lens of psychology and psychoanalysis. Why her? Why this case? Because Sarah Grace Patrick's crimes aren't just brutal. They're a psychological puzzle that demands dissection. The sheer audacity of a 16-year-old girl allegedly gunning down her own parents in their sleep, then playing the grieving daughter on social media, is a horror show that screamed for answers. Picture this: a quiet night in Tyus, Georgia, shattered by gunshots. Kristin and James Brock lie in their bed, unaware of the betrayal creeping through their home. Blood pools beneath them, their bodies riddled with bullets, as their 6-year-old daughter stumbles upon the carnage. Sarah, the one who called 911, weeps in her TikTok videos, begging for prayers, while investigators later uncover mountains of physical and digital evidence pointing to her as the killer. The cold calculation, the crocodile tears of their funeral. It's a case that's as psychologically complex as it is gut-wrenchingly savage, making it the perfect storm for a deep dive into the mind of a murderer. Let's step into the shadows of Sarah Grace Patrick's life, where the seeds of horror were sown long before that fateful February night. We don't know everything about her childhood. Details are scarce, like whispers in a storm, but what we do know paints a picture of instability. Sheriff's Office spokesperson Ashley Hulsey noted that Sarah, at 17, had kind of been out on her own, bouncing between family members, her life a patchwork of fractured homes. This kind of rootlessness can wreak havoc on a developing mind. From a psychological perspective, attachment theory tells us that unstable caregiving can lead to disorganized attachment, where a child struggles to form secure bonds, leaving them vulnerable to emotional dysregulation and identity issues. Imagine a young Sarah, shuttled from one relative to another, never quite finding a place to belong. That kind of instability can breed resentment, a simmering anger that festers beneath the surface, waiting for a spark. Psychoanalytically, we might look to Freud's concept of the death drive, an unconscious urge toward destruction, either the self or others. For Sarah, this drive could have been amplified by feelings of abandonment or rejection. Was she angry at her mother, Kristin, for choices made in her life? Did she resent James, her stepfather, for stepping into a role she never accepted? We don't have her diary, her confessions, or her therapy records, but the act of killing one's parents, parricide, is rare and deeply symbolic. It's the ultimate rebellion against authority, a violent severing of the ties that bind. In Sarah's case, the choice to kill both her mother and stepfather suggests a profound rage, possibly rooted in unresolved trauma or perceived betrayal. So, what kind of mind pulls the trigger on their own family? Let's talk disorders. Based on the evidence, Sarah's behavior screams of traits associated with cluster B personality disorders, particularly borderline personality disorder or even antisocial personality disorder, though she's too young for a formal diagnosis of the latter. BPD is marked by intense emotional instability, fear of abandonment, and impulsive behavior. Sarah's nomadic lifestyle, moving between family members, could fuel a deep-seated fear of rejection, pushing her toward extreme acts to assert control. ASPD, on the other hand, is characterized by a lack of empathy and remorse, often seen in calculated crimes. Her tearful TikTok posts, described as crocodile tears by James Brock's niece, Kristin Brock, suggests a chilling ability to manipulate others' perceptions. This kind of performative grief could point to a psychopathic trait, superficial charm masking a cold, detached core. But let's not rush to labels. Parricide often stems from complex, layered motives. Forensic psychologist Dr. Catherine Ramsland, who studies family annihilators, notes that teenage parricides often act out a need to escape perceived oppression or to reclaim power. Sarah's choice to kill her parents while they slept, vulnerable, defenseless, suggests a desire for absolute control, a way to rewrite her narrative on her terms. The absence of forced entry, the door left slightly ajar, and the missing murder weapon all point to a crime plan with eerie precision. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment outburst. It was a calculated execution, a teenage girl orchestrating a nightmare. Close your eyes and imagine the scene. It's February 20th, 2025, in a quiet home on Tyus Road, Carrollton, Georgia. The house is still, save for the faint hum of James Brock's LV80 heart machine, a lifeline for his failing heart. Sarah, then 16, moves through the shadows, her step silent, her heart pounding, not with fear, but with purpose. She grips a gun, its weight cold and heavy in her hands. Kristin and James lie asleep, unaware that their daughter is about to end their lives. The first shot rings out, a deafening crack in the night. Blood sprays across the sheets, warm and viscous, as Kristin's body jerks and stills. James, perhaps stirred by the sound, has no time to react before the next bullet tears through him. The LVAD alarm wails, a haunting cry that Sarah later claims she heard faintly before bed. The room is a slaughterhouse, the air thick with the coppery stench of blood. Now, picture the 6-year-old sister, Jaylee, waking to the sound of that alarm. She stumbles into her parents' bedroom, her tiny feet padding across the floor, only to find them motionless, their bodies mangled by gunfire. Her screams pierce the silence, and Sarah, playing the role of the horrified sister, dials 911. "My sister found them," she tells the operator, her voice trembling with rehearsed panic, shock, and grief. But the police aren't fooled. The lack of forced entry, the precision of the shots, and the mountains of evidence point to one person, Sarah Grace Patrick. Why Kristin and James? From a psychoanalytic lens, parents are primal figures in a child's psyche, representing both love and authority. For Sarah, they may have symbolized something darker, control, failure, or betrayal. Kristin, described as bubbly and fun, and James, a comical man who doted on his stepchildren, seemed like pillars of their community. Yet, something in Sarah's mind twisted them into targets. Perhaps it was a perceived slight, a buildup of resentment over years of instability, or a projection of her inner turmoil onto them. Psychoanalyst Carl Jung might argue that Sarah was battling her shadow, the repressed, darker aspects of her psyche that she couldn't integrate. Killing her parents could have been her attempt to destroy the external source of her pain, a desperate act to silence the chaos within. The choice to shoot them in their sleep is telling. It's intimate, personal, and cowardly. Sarah didn't confront them. She didn't want to fight. She wanted them gone, erased from her world without resistance. This suggests a deep-seated fear of their power over her, a need to strike when they were most vulnerable. The brutality of the act, multiple gunshots, blood-soaked sheets, speaks to a rage that had been bottled up, perhaps for years. It's as if she was saying, "You can't hurt me anymore," but the tragedy is doubled by the presence of her 6-year-old sister, who became an unwitting witness to the horror. Her innocence shattered in a way Sarah likely didn't anticipate or didn't care about. What makes this case so chilling is Sarah's behavior after the murders. She didn't flee. She didn't confess. Instead, she played the grieving daughter with terrifying conviction. Her TikTok videos, captioned with pleas for prayers for healing, were a masterclass in manipulation. She even reached out to true crime influencers, spinning a tale of an intruder who left her and her sister to find their parents' bodies. One creator, reportedly, recounted Sarah's message. "They're my parents," and out of nowhere, a random Thursday night in February, someone came to my house. The audacity is staggering. A teenager crafting a narrative to deflect suspicion, all while mourning publicly at their funeral. Her eulogy described as fake crying by family. From a psychological perspective, this behavior suggests a chilling level of dissociation. Sarah may have compartmentalized her actions, separating the killer from the grieving daughter. This kind of splitting is common in trauma survivors or those with personality disorders, where the mind creates distinct cells to cope with unbearable guilt or shame. Alternatively, her actions could reflect narcissistic traits, craving attention and sympathy, even at the cost of her parents' lives. The fact that she never deleted her TikTok posts, despite noting she should delete later, suggests either arrogance or subconscious desire to be caught. The Carroll County Sheriff's Office didn't buy Sarah's act. From the moment they arrived at the blood-soaked scene, they sensed something off. No forced entry. A door slightly ajar. No murder weapon. The pieces didn't add up to an intruder. Over months, investigators pieced together mountains of physical and digital evidence, including Sarah's own words, her eulogy, her social media posts, her messages to influencers. The FBI and Georgia Bureau of Investigation joined the hunt, their forensic labs dissecting every fiber, every pixel. By July 8th, 2025, the net closed in. Sarah, accompanied by her father, turned herself in after learning of the arrest warrants. She was charged as an adult with 2 counts of murder and 2 counts of aggravated assault, facing life in prison without parole if convicted. But the investigation isn't over. Sheriff's Office spokesperson Ashley Hulsey hinted at more arrests, saying, "Any information, no matter how small, could crack this case wide open. Was Sarah acting alone, or was there an accomplice? The possibility hangs like a storm cloud, adding another layer of dread to an already horrific tale. What does it mean when a 17-year-old girl becomes a monster?" Sarah Grace Patrick's story forces us to confront the abyss within the human psyche. From a philosophical standpoint, her actions echo Nietzsche's concept of the will to power, a drive to assert dominance over one's circumstances, no matter the cost. Sarah's life, marked by instability and disconnection, may have left her feeling powerless, a pawn in a world she couldn't control. Killing her parents was her twisted attempt to seize that power, to rewrite her story with blood and bullets. Yet, in doing so, she became a prisoner of her own darkness, her act of rebellion chaining her to a life of infamy. Existentially, Sarah's story is a tragedy of choice and consequence. Jean-Paul Sartre argued that we are condemned to be free, burdened with the responsibility of our actions. Sarah chose to kill, but in that choice, she lost herself. Her tearful eulogy, her TikTok pleas, they weren't just deception. They were a desperate attempt to reclaim a narrative she'd already destroyed. Now, as she sits in a cell, facing a lifetime behind bars, we're left to wonder, was she driven by rage, by trauma, or by something darker, something ineffable? Her story is a mirror, reflecting our own fears about what lies beneath the surface of those we think we know. The image that haunts most is the 6-year-old sister, Jaylee, standing over her parents' bloodied bodies. Her world shattered in an instant. Sarah's betrayal wasn't just of her parents. It was of the innocence of a child who trusted her. The psychological scars on Jaylee will linger long after the headlines fade, a reminder that Sarah's actions didn't just end 2 lives. They fracture a family, a community, a sense of safety. As you watch this documentary, feel the weight of that betrayal, the chill of knowing that evil can wear the face of a teenage girl. Sarah Grace Patrick's story isn't just a crime. It's a descent into the darkest corners of the human mind, a place where love turns to hate and a home becomes a slaughterhouse.